Ladies and gentlemen, welcome wrestling fans worldwide to Knoxville and the Great Smoky Mountains for the Ron Fuller, Tennessee Studcast.
6 feet 9 inches tall, 265 pounds.
This historic podcast from one of the most respected and successful wrestlers and promoters will follow the footsteps of the largest and oldest wrestling family on the planet.
Listen to what I'm saying. That's right. Bring that camera in here a little bit closer.
Through 93 years and 4 generations.
The stud has arrived.
Old school or new fan, this unique broadcast will educate and captivate as Ron details decades of professional wrestling's growth with truly unforgettable stories.
I want those people out there at home to hear the stud.
Sit back and enjoy the ride with the Tennessee Stud.
The Tennessee Stud. You will learn that name. You will remember it.
And now,
the stud is here.
All right, let's get to it. Welcome in. It's David Summers hosting another Studcast with the Tennessee Stud, Ron Fuller. It's the story of wrestling in America as told by the stud, whose family started the profession 100 years ago. So now let's step back into the ring, back into time. We get hooked up with the Tennessee Stud, Ron Fuller, hanging out in the Great Smoky Mountains. How was Thanksgiving, Ron?
Oh, it was good, man. Really good. Took a little trip up to Kentucky, just on the Ohio border, just about, and saw my son, my grandson, and spent a little time with them. Had a good time, man. That's what it's all about. Thanksgiving is a good time, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about when we get into the show here today, too.
Absolutely. This is a big-time Thanksgiving show. Listen, Thanksgiving really was big time for you because you spent time with your son and your grandson. I saw and anybody who's friends with you on social media saw this, but there were some pretty cool videos with you and your son and your grandson, and you guys were having at it kind of on the carpet there in the house. I hope that was after. If it was after lunch, I hope there was a 30-minute break. It's like jumping in the pool, stud.
Yeah, that was fun, man. We did that actually a couple of years ago. We did one of those. Wow, had a tremendous number of. The reaction was just well, it was about the same as this last time.
Yeah.
The first time I actually showed them the Fuller leg lock, spent time showing them the Fuller leg lock.
Right.
This time got into a little bit of different stuff off of the grapevine. So it was really fun. They like it too. They kind of act like they don't, because, they get stretched a little bit, but that didn't hurt them. So,
right. It's like Grandpa's coming to town. Oh, my God, we're going to be aching for days. So, hey, but listen, you were not kidding. Your grandson is looking you eye to eye now. He's 16?
Yeah, 16 years old, man. And just dead right up there with both me and Chad. I mean, right, he is about eye to eye.
Yeah.
Close to 6'8", 6'9".
Right.
He's going to hit it real soon. Wow, I don't know how big he's going to be, man. He's going to be the first Welch above 7 feet.
I was going to ask, was there anybody taller than you as you were coming up?
No. Oh, no. Nobody was even close in my family. And, wow, he's just he's really now at the age in which I got my growth spurt.
Right. Wow.
So I was at his age, 6'3", and I grew 5 inches one year and 4 inches the next, just about. I mean, I really popped on up there. So, I don't know if he hits these growth spurts like my son Chad did too.
Right.
Wow. He's liable to be 7'3", 7'2", 7'3". I don't know.
Wow. Everybody on your Facebook pages, everybody's going, all right, so he's going to be a wrestler, right? And you were pushing him back. No, he's going to do basketball.
Yeah, man. I don't know about putting him in the ring, and it ain't like the old days anymore.
Right.
So might not head that direction with him. And he's got a pretty good future. I actually got to see him play in a game, and he had 8 points and 5 blocks, and 6 rebounds, and he had a pretty good game. And it was a shortened game too. It was kind of like a scrimmage game, but I think he's going to be pretty good, man. He's got a big time future, hopefully.
Hey, you got to be proud of that, and your son too. And it was an awesome Thanksgiving. So that's fantastic. Speaking of Thanksgiving, Stud, this Studcast title really says it all. 2 great Thanksgiving cards, 1978. That's the title. So your second Southeastern Territory, Gulf Coast, had been open for about 9 months. Fans there were getting their first Southeastern Thanksgiving wrestling card, while Southeastern Knoxville fans were having their third Thanksgiving card.
Yep, that's correct, man. It was the first time since becoming an owner of a wrestling company in 1974 that Southeastern was going to have 2 wrestling shows in 2 different states on Thanksgiving. And in fact, it might have been for the first time any territory in history did it. That is, so far as I'm aware, if anybody out there listening can verify it happened somewhere else, then please let me know, and I'll be glad to acknowledge that fact on the next Studcast. But I believe that we were in a territory, basically, a good way of putting it, I guess, that was never been touched before. So if anybody knows anything about that, please let me know if I'm wrong about it. The sad fact was, because of what was going to happen in 1979 in the Knoxville War, it was going to be the last time it happened for Southeastern. I do know it definitely happened again 6 years later on Thanksgiving Day in 1985. And on that day, Continental Championship Wrestling had 2 Thanksgiving events in 2 different states on the same day. One in the afternoon in Knoxville, Tennessee, and the other that night in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow. See, I'm not surprised at all that you probably made wrestling history with that. It would not be the first time or the last time. In fact, didn't you have 2 events in those 2 same cities on Christmas Day, 85, 86, something like that?
Yeah, sure did, Dave. Thanksgiving and Christmas were basically the 2 best holidays of the year for wrestling and its fans, obviously. And with Continental Championship Wrestling, we started our day wrestling at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Time, in the afternoon in the Knoxville Coliseum. And then we drove 250 miles south to wrestle again the same night in Birmingham at 8:30 Central Time. And then we got in the car again and drove another 250 miles to get to Pensacola. So in that one day, we did 500 miles total. We arrived in Pensacola about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so in a period of about 12 hours, we wrestled twice, plus drove 500 miles.
Wow. So that had to be a totally exhausting day. Anybody that's been out on the road, even for pleasure, would know that. But how much do the wrestlers make on a day like that?
Well, every year, both cities sold out. Wow. I mean, it was a great day for wrestling. Both Christmas and Thanksgiving. And the guys on top usually made somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 for that day alone. And I kind of looked it up, just seeing what that would be in today's money. And in today's money, that would be making about $8,500 in one day.
Wow. All right, I don't know about them, but that would have made me feel a whole lot better about a long day. And you're talking about 1978 money too, on top of that. All right, so speaking of the day, where do we ride today, Stud?
Well, this is going to be a cram full episode today, Dave. We're beginning our ride. We're going to start out in southeastern Knoxville, this Studcast, and it's going to be the 3rd Thanksgiving night card in southeastern history, with an outstanding 6-match card in Knoxville. And I'm going to give everyone that entire card. We're going to talk about how it was only my 5th appearance in the Knoxville Coliseum in the last 7 months. I'm going to be wrestling. I'm back on the card this time. And I did, however, appear on TV 6 days before this event. And I was on the TV show that advertised this card. And then we're going to cover that entire TV show. Then we'll talk about our riders, give everybody out there listening the results of the Coliseum card and the record. It was a record Thanksgiving attendance in the Knoxville Coliseum for that building, not just for wrestling, but for the building. So from there, we're going to ride 500 miles south. We'll go down to southeastern Gulf Coast for the Thanksgiving night card. It's going to be in Mobile down there, Mobile, Alabama. And it also had 6 matches on that card down there. They had 2 title matches. They had a special ladies match, and we'll break down the TV show that advertised the event down there, give the people the results of the card. And as usual, the attendance of all 3 major markets, maybe even a little more than that attend of it, to be honest with you. And if we have time, geez, here we go. I'll answer another learning tree question after all that.
Well, you throw it out there, so we'll have to try to work that thing in. Listen, you were filling lightning saddlebags as full as possible for this one, Stud. We better start hitting the trail. All right, so what was on that Thanksgiving night card, southeastern Knoxville, Thursday, November 23rd, 1978?
Well, this was a triple main event card. It was a great card. The Mighty Yankee, who was a pretty big name in the South back in those days. He opened this card up against Dennis Hall, another pretty darn good wrestler. And then there was a $10,000 bounty match. It was the second on that card. And obviously Kevin Sullivan's money was up again. And he brought in another friend of his to go after Ron Wright. And this time it was Charlie Cook, man. So Charlie was going to be making his Knoxville debut. He had never wrestled in that southeastern Knoxville territory. Then the next match on that card was a follow-up match from the elimination main event that we talked about on the last Studcast. It was on that last card in Knoxville. And this was Kevin Sullivan and Ken Lucas, two of the men in the elimination match. They were going to be taking on 2 of the other guys on the other team from that elimination match. They're going to be wrestling against Bob Roop and Bob Orton Jr. That's going to tie. And then in the first of the 3 main events after all this, Southeastern Knoxville Tag Champions are going to that's Condrey and Hickerson, obviously, presented by Ron Wright Incorporated. Going to be facing the team that earned the title match by beating them the week before. That was Rip Smith and Mike Stallings. So that's the first of 3. The second main event is for the Southeastern Championship. It's the great Malenko, and he's going to be facing me. And then the last main event was a Russian torture match with the Destroyer, seconded by Boris Malenko, against Ronnie Garvin, and I'm going to be in Garvin's corner.
Wow, okay. That's really a fantastic card. All right, so what happened on the TV 6 days before that Thanksgiving night to set all this up?
Well, let's open the show in a tight shot. He announced right off the bat that the great Malenko was defending his television championship trophy on this show against the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller. And plus, there were going to be 2 tag matches on the show and a special personality profile and the introduction of a former NFL football player and another Southeastern newcomer. So, he kind of ran down the card for everybody. And then the cameras backed away, and there he sat with the newest challengers to Ron Wright's Southeastern Tag Champions. And the big set behind them had that giant shot on it, still shot, and it showed these 2 guys, these new challengers with their taped fists, still had their fists taped as the taped fist match. They had their hands raised in victory, and you could see in the same shot, Dennis Condrey and Phil Hickerson are both laying there bleeding on the mat, and Ron Wright was tied in the ropes in the same shot. So it looked like those boys took care of business. Then the studio, they saw the shot, man, they popped, and most of those people had already seen the match live the night before in the Coliseum. But it didn't stop the fans from showing their encouragement for these 2 young guys, man, that had really made a showing in their first match with these champions. So Rip Smith and then Mike Stallings, due to this victory, they were sitting with Les, and they were getting a title match the next Friday night. Les congratulated them and invited them to stay and a comment for the first match. So obviously that was perfect for him because Ron Wright, here came Ron Wright and his team. And wow, his team was all bandaged up. I mean, they'd been beat pretty big time, man, in that Tate Fist match the night before. And boy, they were upset, and you could tell by the way they wrestled. I mean, I remember watching them. Wow, they took their frustration out on two young guys that had just showed up for TV, and I'm sure they were sorry they came. And there was Smith and Stallings, at the desk, and they made it known how they felt about how great a team Condrey and Higginson were, and how sorry they were for them to be under the thumb of a tyrant like Ron Wright. Said it's a shame they couldn't got a better guy to handle them than Ron Wright. And then at the end of the match, they predicted that they were going to win the championship on the following Thursday night, which pretty big prediction for sure. And then Ron Wright and his team, they went to the set with Les for the first interview. And Les asked Ron Wright, very good question. He asked him why his team's good old Tennessee dog whooping he predicted the last week.
I knew it.
That he predicted was going to happen to Smith and Stallings. Les asked him why. He said, but it looked like it didn't happen to Smith and Stallings, but it happened to your team. So he said it might have been the best opportunity of the show, man. And it might have been the best question of the show.
It kind of sounds like Les was on fire and kind of saying what the fans had to be thinking.
Well, he was off to a good start, that's for darn sure. So, and then fans loved it, man. When someone or something, anything or anybody that got to Ron Wright, the fans loved it, and they loved to laugh at Ron Wright and make fun of him. And at the end of the first interview, Les asked Wright if he'd like to join him for today's personality profile. Kind of off the wall, and it wasn't planned to be Ron Wright. And so Wright, wow, in his usual cocky manner said, he wasn't surprised that Les needed him, and he'd be glad to because he said, I'm the most interesting wrestler, manager, and a promoter in the Southeast. And fans love hearing from me, right? But he was going to end up regretting this invitation that he had just accepted before this show was over. So then another new team, other than the Rip Smith and Mike Stallings team, was in the second match. And that new team was Bob Roop and Bob Orton Jr. And these two guys had seemingly formed like an instant friendship. And wow, were they a dangerous team. I mean, and that was really apparent, man. At the end of this match, when both of their opponents had to be carried out of the ring, Bob Roop put a shoulder breaker on one of them, and Orton Jr. used that inverted pile driver on the other one. So, wow, it was devastating, man. It looked like they killed both of those guys. And poor guys that were doing the TV, man, the jobbers that were showing up, they were paying the heavy-duty price. So,
I hope you paid them good.
Oh man, I couldn't have paid them what they deserved.
Wow.
They were just being pulverized. So they were and these two guys, Orton Jr. and Bob Roop, they were going to be meeting Kevin Sullivan and Ken Lucas on that Thanksgiving night.
Wow.
They were going to in a 30-minute time limit elimination tag match. That, by the way these elimination matches work, is when you beat one guy, he went back to the dressing room. So that being the rules of this match, definitely one of these teams was going to end up with one man on it against two, right? So that's not a good situation to be in, especially if you had guys like Roop and Orton Jr. are the two guys that's in the ring with you. So then Ron Wright came to the live interview, came to the personality profile, came to, and it was live right in front of the crowd by himself. And boy, he was ready to brag about all his recent success, as Ron Wright was wont to do. I mean, he was really good at it. And but before he really got off and running, Les started showing the end of the bounty match from the night before. That was between Dennis Hall and Ron Wright. And it opened up toward the end of the match where Dennis Hall had worked on his leg the entire match, then had him in the figure four. And the video opened up where the Destroyer came to the ring. And he came in and he stomped Dennis Hall, who had a figure four leg lock on Ron Wright. And obviously he was trying to prevent Ron Wright from having a bad enough injury to go to the hospital. Because, he didn't want to see him in the hospital, obviously. And, he didn't want Kevin Sullivan to get that opportunity and to get that high spot feeling, man, of having sent Ron Wright to the hospital after Kevin got sent there.
Yeah.
So Ron Wright, obviously, he didn't like Les jumping in on him. So he jumped right in and started describing his version of what they were seeing everybody at home was seeing, basically. And, he said, he's right. You're right, Les. That was a Destroyer. He came in the ring. But he said he was there to tell the referee, Dennis Hall, that's an illegal hold he had on me. And look, he accidentally stumbled and fell on Dennis Hall on his way to talk to the referee. Instead, he stomped Dennis Hall, which everybody could see. He was in there just to tell the referee he's using it, and then he accidentally fell on Dennis Hall. So Wright's got his own version of what's going on. So then Kevin Sullivan arrived in the video. Right there's Kevin Sullivan came down because the Destroyer's in there. He's already stomped on Dennis Hall. He's got him over his shoulder, and he's about to put a shoulder breaker on him. And the Wright and Les is saying, "Oh, look, now there's Kevin, and the Destroyer's picked up Hall, and he's got him on his shoulder." And Les is about to say, hey, obviously he's going to hurt him. And then Wright kind of took over again. And, he said, well, I was real upset about Sullivan being down there at the ring. And he said, the Destroyer's he's just about to throw Hall over his shoulder because he wants to help him back to the dressing room. He wants to help him. He's hurt. And then he said, look, Sullivan almost broke both the Destroyer's legs because Sullivan dived underneath his legs. And the Destroyer collapsed with Dennis Hall on top of him, and boy, it really hurt his legs. It probably really injured his ankles for sure. So Wright claimed that's why he said these bounty matches, they're too dangerous and they should be done away with. Now he's the guy that started the original bounty match, but now he says they need to get these bounty matches out of here. So then Les finally got to talk, and then. So he told Wright he was glad he brought up the bounty matches because he said, you got an opponent, and your next opponent and a real good friend of Kevin Sullivan, you got another bounty match, Ron, coming up, and it's with a newcomer to Southeastern. And Ron knew nothing about this match. He didn't even know he was booked. And then he said, Les says, you're going to be wrestling a former Pittsburgh Steeler linebacker. And he's going to be your next opponent on Thanksgiving night. And Wright's like, whoa, wait a minute here. No, what are you talking about? And then, Les just kept putting Charlie Cook over, man. You really got a tough road to hoe, man. I think this guy's going to get the bounty, Ron. You're going to end up in the hospital. And Wright went ballistic, man.
Wow.
And he got so mad he jerked his lapel microphone off, and he's screaming at Les. There's something about Don Curtis, the Southeastern Commissioner's got no right to be putting me in the ring with a professional football player. It's like, what's he doing here? And the studio crowd, obviously, they were loving it, man. And as he left the set, threw the microphone down, and the fans were booing him, man. They were booing him like crazy.
All right, that certainly was not an ordinary personality profile. No wonder the fans were absolutely going crazy. And they do that every time Ron Wright is in the picture. All right, so what happens next? Who was on next?
Well, that same wrestler, man, just talked about, that was making his Knoxville debut, Charlie Cook, man, he was in the ring next. And boy, did he make an impression on everybody. He got a big win, man. And he used something that I hadn't seen him do down there in southeastern Gulf Coast. He hit the guy with a football tackle, man. At the end of it,
Wow.
turned his opponent a flip in the air. And I'm sure fans at home could picture that happening to Ron Wright on Thanksgiving night. Seeing Charlie Cook do that to Ron Wright 6 nights later. But anyway, wow, he really made a great first impression. And then it was time, man, for the great Malenko to defend the TV trophy that he had won from my brother almost exactly 2 months earlier on Rob's last match in southeastern Knoxville. And so Malenko went to the ring first, and he was escorted by the Destroyer, which is going to be the opposite thing comes Thanksgiving night. Malenko is going to be going to the ring, and the Destroyer is going to be seconding him. So Malenko came to the ring, and he was carrying, the Destroyer was carrying Malenko's TV trophy, which is a big trophy. Wow. But Malenko, I guess, felt like he was too good to carry his own trophy. And then I was just totally blown away by the fans, Dave. I mean, I got those chill bumps, man. When I came into the studio, that studio went crazy, man. And oddly enough, man, my last match in Knoxville had been on the same day that Robert lost that TV championship to the great Malenko.
Wow.
So I'd been out, that'd been 2 months earlier. I'd only been there five matches in the last 7 months since we started Southeastern Gulf Coast. Mm-hmm. So the Destroyer didn't leave ringside. He stayed at the ring. And the studio crowd was really going crazy during this match. And at the end of it, I got my full leg lock on him, probably about 10 minutes into the match. And the Destroyer jumped on the apron, man. And he was headed in. And when I have that hold, man, I'm pretty much in a very vulnerable position. I couldn't get away and couldn't jump out of it real quick. My legs are kind of tied up with whoever I've got it on. But thank goodness Ronnie Garvin, man, came from the dressing room, man, and he drug the old Destroyer off the apron of the ring, and he spun him around, and he hit him with one of those fist of stone punches, man, that he was famous for. Ronnie Garvin had a hell of a punch, and he put the old Destroyer down. He didn't get up, and so Malenko gave up. It was either that or I was going to break his leg. And so he gave up, and I became the Southeastern TV champion, actually for the 5th time since Southeastern came there in 1974. And Garvin jumped in the ring, and he raised my hand with the referee, and there wasn't anybody sitting down in the studio, I can tell you that, and it sounded like 1,000 people in that building rather than a couple of hundred. So then Malenko finally, he struggled up on his feet, and then he upped the Destroyer, and they went back to Studio B, and me and Ronnie went to the set with Les. And, when they cut away, the first thing, Les threw it to Studio B, and Malenko was having a hard time holding up the groggy Destroyer that Ronnie had tapped pretty good. And so then, Malenko said, he didn't care come the Thanksgiving night. He didn't know nothing about Thanksgiving. He was a Russian, and he didn't care about it. And that his friends, Bob Roop, the Destroyer, Bob Orton Jr., they're all going to be there, and they're all going to help me keep my belt. You're not going to win my other championship, Ron Fuller. So Garvin and I, man, we were obviously at the set, and I thank Garvin for keeping the Destroyer off of me in the TV and giving me the opportunity to win the TV title. And I promised him that on Thanksgiving night, I was going to be in his corner, and I was going to do my best to see that I could do the same thing he had done for me. And he was in a Russian torture match with the Destroyer, and he promised to watch my Southeastern title match with Malenko, saying he thought I was going to end up taking both of Malenko's titles get the other one on Thanksgiving and take both of Malenko's titles in a 5-day period of time. So
wow,
that would have been quite an accomplishment.
Oh, absolutely. Another really tremendous TV stud. So how about the Coliseum for Thanksgiving night?
Well, the Mighty Yankee beat Dennis Hall. Charlie Cook, he made a lot of fans, man, in his bounty match with Ron Wright. I mean, he hit Ron Wright with one of those football tackles. And it turned him a flip, and it sent him through the ropes, and he landed on the concrete. Right. And so the referee counted him out, and all of his friends that he'd mentioned on TV days earlier, came down and they carried him out. And Charlie's Cook hand was raised, obviously. He never got back in the ring. And he really got over in the first night. No doubt about that. And Ron Wright, but Ron Wright, bottom line, wasn't sent to the hospital. He was able to come back and wrestle the next week. And as a matter of fact, so then the 30-minute time limit elimination tag match between Sullivan and Ken Lucas against Bob Roop and Bob Orton Jr. Was a tremendous match. And I watched most of this match, and it had no eliminations. In the 30 minutes, nobody lost, none of the four guys. So the time limit ran out, and there was no winner, basically. Then I was really wondering what the results of that was going to be. And then Dennis Condrey and Phil Hickerson, they successfully defended their Southeastern belts against Rip Smith and Mike Stallings. They kind of made up for their butt kicking that they took the week before. And then the last match of the night, and I was a winner in the Southeastern title match, but the Destroyer kind of saved Malenko's belt for him. He got him disqualified, which means I won the match, got my hand raised, but Malenko still was able to leave with the belt. And the last match of the night, the Russian torture match between Garvin and the Destroyer, was a really great match. Wow, that building was going crazy, and Ronnie won when the Destroyer seemed to be totally blown up. Right? I mean, he was involved in this Russian torture match, and also Bob Roop wrestled with Bob Orton Jr. in a 30-minute draw earlier in the night.
Right.
So I was like, so he was just so blown up that he lost right in the middle of the ring, and both Malenko and I got into it on the floor about the time that Ronnie was taking care of the Destroyer, and it had a great ending for the fans there. What a big night, man.
Well, all right. So was this proof that the so-called Destroyer / Bob Roop might have run out of energy from wrestling in a 30-minute time limit draw match and then a Russian torture match in the same night? And how did you do on attendance? It had to be huge.
Yeah, well, and let's talk just a little bit about the Destroyer and Bob Roop, and was Bob Roop both of these people? And obviously, if you had a 30-minute match with really good competition like Sullivan and Ken Lucas, and then you're going to come back and wrestle Ronnie Garvin in a Russian torture match, I mean, that's torture. That's what that really is, that whole night, And I think any wrestler trying to do both those matches in one night with that kind of opponents, they were really pushing it, man. I mean, I could never figure out why Bob Roop wanted to do that, except that, I guess he got double pay. If he worked two matches, he got double pay. So as far as the attendance, it was described in the city's newspaper the next morning, man. I flipped over the paper, and I used to do that every time we did matches. And so I looked, and the first thing at the top of the article that wrote about the wrestling said there was an all-time record in the Coliseum for any type of Thanksgiving event.
Wow.
So it was announced as 5,800, but it was probably closer to 6,000 in the building.
Hey, that's interesting. How does the newspaper have a contact inside your company, or is the contact with the Coliseum to say, how did y'all do last night on ticket sales for wrestling? Was it?
Well, they had their own writer. They had
Right,
a writer.
right.
The Knoxville News Sentinel was the name of the paper, and they sent their writer down each week. And then he would always go to the Coliseum office and find out what the attendance was before he left.
Yeah. Okay. So he had.
They like to write about it in the paper, but this one was great because they admitted that this was an all-time record crowd for any Thanksgiving event in the history of the Coliseum.
Yeah.
So we were doing good, man.
That's cool. So you probably never knew a reporter was there and he was getting the information and found out so you got it ready for the paper tomorrow. That's pretty awesome. All right, listen, this has been a great start to our Thanksgiving 1978 matches. Let's take a break right here. We're going to be back, and after the break, it's a dive into the other Southeastern Gulf Coast Thanksgiving night. That is coming up when this Studcast continues right here. Hey, stud fans, you already know tnstud.com is where you go for something different and special that can't be found anywhere else. Make your gift one of their Christmas favorites. Do your shopping for Ron Fuller's Tennessee Stud unique Christmas gifts now. tnstud.com. Click Stud Store for the autographed Brutus book or the book only. Numerous autographed photos, limited t-shirts, and more. tnstud.com. Everything purchased comes with free shipping. Please order by Monday, December 12th. All right, everybody, welcome back in. Episode number 277. Two great Thanksgiving cards, 1978, as this Studcast resumes. So where was the Thanksgiving night card of November 23rd, 1978 in Southeastern Gulf Coast held, Ron? And who was on it?
Well, it was in Mobile, Alabama, man, which was the best drawn city in the Southeastern Gulf Coast in our first year of operation down there. Wow, it was a great wrestling city. And Mobile had started as a Tuesday night city, and then we kind of moved it into Wednesday night. So by this time of the year, it would seem like a natural fit to just move it one more night later and put it on Thursday night on Thanksgiving night. So the only negative was the fact that we were going to have to be in Expo Hall, and we weren't going to be able to get in the main arena, man, which was a big building, about 13,000 seats or so. So ticket sales were going to have to be stopped when the box office reached 5,000 fans. That's what Expo Hall held. It was about 5,000 people. Sure would have loved to have been in a bigger building because we turned away a lot of people that would have loved to be there on Thanksgiving night.
Wow.
And then the card opened, though, with another newcomer from Southeastern Knoxville. This is the third one in 3 weeks. Terry Gibbs started that night against Gorgeous George Jr. Newcomer Frankie Lane wrestled Norvell Austin. And then the special ladies match, Judy Martin faced off against Leilani Kai. And then it would have been a match that I think would have been a main event, man, just about anywhere in the world at this time. And that was David Schultz against Jimmy Golden, was the fourth match on that card. And then came the first of two main events on this card. A no disqualification Southeastern Tag Championship match with Robert Fuller and Tony Charles, getting their second shot at the belts of Don Carson and the Assassin, managed by Billy Spears. And then the second main event was also a no disqualification match for the Southeastern belt. The champion, Mongolian Stomper, managed by Gorgeous George Jr., was wrestling, man, that always the fan favorite there in that part of the country, Bob Armstrong.
Yeah, you used to have a nickname for him. I forget. Oh, Mr. Goody Two Shoes.
Goody Two Shoes. Mr. Goody Two Shoes. I hate to call him that anymore, man.
I know.
I can't hardly call him that anymore.
I know. I feel you, brother. All right, so that's another great 6-match card, 2 title matches, a ladies match, and 3 good opening matches. So how about the TV setting this whole thing up?
Well, Charlie Platt opened the show, man, in a close-up, and they were plugging a very rare Battle Royal that was going to be on this show. That was what he was talking about. And to sell that match, he had the director put up a split screen shot. and it would show two groups of wrestlers on the same screen at one time. On one side of the screen, it had 5 heels that were going to be in the Battle Royal, and on the other side of the screen, it had 5 baby faces that were in the Battle Royal. And then Charlie named off all 10 of them, and he announced that the winner of the Battle Royal on the show today was going to get $5,000. And obviously, the studio crowd responded, man, with cheers. They were very excited, obviously, to see a Battle Royal on TV. It didn't happen very often. So after the photos disappeared, then Charlie was sitting there with the man in Southeastern Gulf Coast, Bob Armstrong, and they watched this title match, the first title match. This was the first time that Bob Armstrong had wrestled the Mongolian Stomper in Southeastern Gulf Coast history. And they showed that match back. And it would have been, and these guys were going to have some legendary matches in the future, man. Wow, these two guys always had tremendous matches. Then Gorgeous George intentionally got his Stomper disqualified in the match while Bob and Charlie's watching it, obviously to save the Stomper's belt. And so then the next, this Thanksgiving night confrontation that was coming up was going to be a no disqualification match. And Charlie asked Bob to stay with him for comments on the first match of the show. Kind of like what happened, I guess, with the first match in Southeastern Knoxville.
Right. And who was on that first match?
Oh, well, the same wrestler that was on the first match in the last show.
You did not. All right. So did you put the Stomper on first again, Ron, to excite the studio, panic the studio?
I'd like to say yes, Dave, but no, I didn't do it because I wasn't booking down there. I wasn't even down there in that state of Alabama, North Florida, and my brother Robert was responsible for that. I guess he enjoyed it, and and he and I talked about the impact that Stomper was having on those studio audiences down there. We kind of laughed a little bit about it, So Rob loved it, and so did Archie Goldie, which is the real name of the Stomper. Archie loved that fact too, that he could panic that studio and drive them crazy, I'm sure they couldn't wait to see how much panic the Mongol was going to create that week on TV. So I'm pretty sure Bob Armstrong and Charlie Platt, knowing us too, and they see all this pandemonium going on in the studio, I'm sure they were hiding their faces and laughing at what the Stomper was creating, man, on a regular basis. So, but I can tell you, man, the serious part of it from experience, and after that fun that they had there, the Stomper got dead serious, man, about everything else. He was focused. I guess that's a good word. And Rob told me later, man, that he left his opponent laying. I'm sure he did. I never saw him leave one that wasn't laying. And then the second segment of the show was always a good time for fans, because it was Bob Armstrong, and he was in the ring this time. And he ended up putting another wrestler to sleep, which that was the way he won most of his matches back in those days. Then the personality profile was with Jimmy Golden. And Charlie Platt welcomed him to Southeastern Wrestling. It was just his second week in the territory down there. And Charlie told fans that even though most fans had never seen him, and he said, this guy, Jimmy Golden, is very familiar to the fans in the Montgomery area because he became a wrestling star at a very early age in that city. Which is true. His dad, Bill Golden, promoted that town, and Jimmy was a big star in Montgomery long before he became a star anywhere else. And then Charlie said basically that too, that since that time that Jimmy became a star in Montgomery, that Jimmy had become a star in many places across America, and he had wrestled all over the world, which is true. Australia and Japan. He had been to 4 or 5 different countries by this age, by this time in 1978. And Charlie said that he was here for a reason, Jimmy was here for a reason. And Charlie said, I found out something that he didn't tell me. Somebody told me what this is all about. And then he says, that's why I invited him on the profile today. And he said, Jimmy, you got a story here that you want to tell. And he says, I don't want to tell it. I want you to tell it. And that's why I invited you on here. And he did say, Charlie said that, some of the wrestlers here, Jimmy, are not going to be very happy to see you. I can say that. So Jimmy kind of took it from there. And so he thanked Charlie for the opportunity to tell his story. But he started by saying how happy he was to be back in Alabama, the place he considered to be home. And although he'd never wrestled in the southern part and Dothan and Mobile, down in the Pensacola and the Panhandle of Florida, but he wanted to say hello to his friends in Montgomery, and he was glad to be home. And then he had a video with him, and he said, this video I think is going to tell my story better than I ever could. So Charlie asked the director, Wayne Register, to run the video. And because we only had 3 top baby faces in the territory at this point, and we wanted to continue the tremendous growth that we'd been experiencing down there, we needed to get a new baby face over as quickly as possible. We just didn't have enough number of good matches that we liked to be able to do. So we did something that we had never done before on this profile. We used a video, and the video was actually shot about 3 years earlier in another territory. And we used the video to create a grudge match between Jimmy and Billy Spears because it gave Jimmy Golden a reason to be here in the territory. And hopefully that was going to ensure that Jimmy was going to get over quick, maybe quicker than he would have by doing it any other way. So in this video, Jimmy was managed by his father, Bill Golden, and he was wrestling against Don Fargo, that a lot of fans down there in that part of the country knew very well. And Don Fargo was managed by Billy Spears. So the video showed Spears, in the end of the match, got a hold of Bill Golden, and he pile drived him on the concrete. And then they showed Bill being put on a stretcher and carried out and put into an ambulance, and they hauled him off to the hospital. So Jimmy told fans that, this had happened recently and that he had been trying to find Billy Spears since it happened. And he told Charlie that he knew there was a battle royal on TV today and that he saw a picture of the wrestlers at the beginning of the show on TV. And he said, Charlie, one of those guys was Billy Spears. Is that right? And Charlie says, that's right. And so he said, Charlie, do you think there's any way that you can get me into that battle royal today? And Charlie wanted to see it, I'm sure, and wow, the fans really jumped on it in the studio. And Charlie said, well, Jimmy, I don't see why not, and he goes, it's going to be a 10-man battle royal, so an 11-man battle royal, probably better than 10. And he goes, besides that, there's a $5,000 prize if you win it. And Jimmy was very serious about it, and he said, I don't care about the money, Charlie. He goes, I don't even care about winning it. He said, I just want to get my hands on Billy Spears. And Rob said the studio exploded on that one.
Yeah, I bet it did. I mean, wasn't a battle royal enough, Stud? You guys had to add some spice to it, right? So who was the third TV match?
Well, Robert and Tony Charles. And they were getting warmed up, basically, for their no disqualification Southeastern Championship match on Thanksgiving night. And they easily won the TV match, but not before Billy Spears had a chance to come running to the set and confront Charlie Platt about this sudden appearance of Jimmy Golden and who's behind all this. And he had 1,000 questions for Charlie, and Charlie wasn't answering them. And then the match ended, and Spears is kind of trapped in that studio. The baby faces had to pass the front of the set on the way back to the dressing room. And Billy Spears saw them get their hands raised, and he took off running. And he wanted to be past them before they confronted him. So it kind of left. That was a good way to get Billy Spears out of Charlie's hair, I guess. So then the Battle Royal was the last match on TV, and it was an over-the-top rope. As most battle royals were, you had to be thrown over the top rope to be eliminated, and obviously there was $5,000 prize going to the winner. It had Don Carson in it. It had the Assassin, Billy Spears, David Schultz, and Norvell Austin. All those guys came out of the heel dressing room, and it had from the babyface dressing room Terry Gibbs, Frankie Lane, Ricky Fields, the Wrestling Pro, Burrhead Jones. And now it had Jimmy Golden. He's going to be in that same group. So Rob said, I wasn't there. I didn't get to see this, but Rob and I talked about all of this, and he said the Royal was a great one, and it ended up with Don Carson, Billy Spears, and Jimmy Golden as the last three in the ring. And Jimmy was bleeding. Don Carson had already loaded his glove during the course of the early part of the Battle Royal and hit Jimmy with it and busted him open, but they weren't able to throw him out of the ring, so he ended up down there as the last three. And then at the end of the match, Billy Spears, standing with his back to the ropes, he got a full Nelson on Jimmy. And he screamed for Carson to finish him off. And Don, I guess I didn't ask Rob, but I assume he probably had his glove still loaded. And so Billy said, go ahead and knock him out here, man, because he's going to get away from me. And but Carson, being a showman, he had to run across the ring opposite where Billy was, and then he bounced off the ropes and came running back full speed. And he was going to take Jimmy's head off with this one, man. He was going to nail him with that loaded glove again. And and when Carson left his feet, about mid-ring, he was kind of off balance. He took a big swing, and Jimmy bent forward. And Spears is full Nelson him, so when Jimmy bent forward, it pulled Spears forward too, right? And Carson took the swing, and he missed Jimmy, and he landed on Spears' back, and right? And when he did, Jimmy straightened up, and he went straight over the ropes and out on the floor.
Wow.
So Carson eliminated himself, basically. And then Jimmy, once he saw what happened there, and Carson was out of it, and the studio popped naturally. They were really into it. And then Golden went after Spears like a madman. Rob said Jimmy was pounding him and just choking him, and he couldn't do enough to him. And he said Carson grabbed Spears and he drug him out of the ring to save his butt. And they ran to the dressing room. And so they were trying to raise Jimmy. Rob said they were trying to raise Jimmy's hand. And he said Jimmy didn't even want his hand raised. They were trying to give him the check. He said he threw the check on the mat, and he ran to the dressing room that Spears and Carson had gone into, and was trying to get in the door. They locked the door to the dressing room, and Jimmy's out there banging on it and trying to get in. And so the show ended up, he didn't care about the money. He was right. He didn't care about the money.
Hey, none of this surprises me because you and Rob have done this so many times with so many stars that came in. You made an instant star out of Jimmy Golden in one day. He had to be completely over by that point. That is an incredible TV right there. All right, so, I mean, it absolutely had a little bit of everything with a huge pop on the end. So what happened on the Thanksgiving night card in Mobile?
Well, Terry Gibbs beat Gorgeous George Jr. Norvell Austin won his match over Frankie Lane. Norvell was he was really in his prime. Norvell wasn't being used as good as he was going to be, but we were working to get him there. We were going to start to focus on Norvell more. Lalani Kai won the ladies' match over Judy Martin. And Rob said David Schultz and Jimmy Golden had one of the best 30-minute time limit matches that he had ever seen. Schultz was he was really getting good. Jimmy had been wrestling a lot longer than David at this point. But I can imagine what type of match these guys had. And Rob said it was just absolutely unbelievable. And then he also said that the no disqualification Southeastern Tag Championship match was a really hot one. That was the one he was in with Tony Charles. And they were in there against Don Carson and the Assassin for the championship. And he said that Tony and him was at a point in the match where he thought it had it won, and Tony had the Assassin pinned. And Don Carson just knocked the referee down on purpose, just to get it disqualified so that they didn't lose the belt. And Rob said he went after Carson, and then Billy Spears standing out on the floor. Now the referee's down. He's going to take care of business, I guess he thought. So he entered the ring, and he went straight toward Tony Charles, but he didn't get there. Jimmy Golden, man, shot up into the ring, standing in the back. I guess he saw Billy Spears start into the ring, and here he came. And he went and grabbed Spears. He threw him over the top rope, and he went out on the floor and started putting the boots to him. So, you know, the referee's still down. So David Schultz standing back there watching what's going on, and he had a real thing for Tony Charles. And so he just slid into the ring, and he stomped Tony Charles in the back. He picked him up, he pile drive him, put the Assassin on top of him, and he left the ring. By this point, the referee had kind of got his stuff back together, and he crawled over there and he counted out Tony Charles, and he raised the champion's hands. And when they were getting their hands raised, they looked out there, and Jimmy Golden is still working on now Billy Spears, who's a pretty bloody mess, and his white suit too had blood all over it, Rob said. And so then the Carson and the Assassin and Schultz, they grabbed Spears and they headed for the dressing room, but it was in Mobile, so they had to have a police brigade to get him there. and they did. You know, they got him there somehow. But, wow, it was always dangerous in Mobile. So the night had a really good ending to it, man, for all the fans. Bob Armstrong beat the Mongolian Stomper, which ended Stomper's 2-month reign as the Southeastern Gulf Coast champion, and it put the belt back on Bob Armstrong that he had had the belt in about 4 months. So great ending for Thanksgiving.
Oh, big time. Leaving with Bob Armstrong as the champion. That's a big night. All right, so what was the attendances for 3 major cities on this Thanksgiving week?
Well, normally, you know what, that card went into 3 cities, but I think I'm going to give the listeners a little bit more than usual today, Dave. It was the best week so far, not only in the Gulf Coast Territory's history, but in Southeastern's history at that time. Wow, it was a tremendous, tremendous week. And so I'm just going to, I planned on doing this to really let people know what things were really like. So that week began on a Sunday in Pensacola. We had 3,100 people. On Monday night, we were in Montgomery. We had 3,500. On Wednesday night, we ran Marianna, Florida, and had 2,000 people in National Guard Armory, total sellout. On Thursday, we were in Mobile with this Thanksgiving night. We sold that out, had 5,100. On Friday, we were in Dothan with 4,900. And we ended up in Troy, Alabama on Saturday night with 2,700. Ended up with 21,300 fans in Southeastern Gulf Coast. Then we had 18,300 fans in Southeastern Knoxville that same week. We ended up selling 39,600 tickets in that 1 week.
That's a good-sized football stadium. I mean, full of fans. So, wow, that number and that kind of number had to be competing with major territories, Ron. So, without a doubt, this has been another great one, Ron. So, it makes the old school fans want to return to the good old days, no doubt about it. I'm sorry, but I think we're not going to have enough time for our learning tree question. If you missed it last week, it was an exciting exceptional learning tree question. I hate we missed one this week, but we will catch up with that next week for sure. All right, so folks on Facebook, if you'd like to become friends with Ron to participate in the dueling cards pick and TV pick as well, but you're not already friends, you can become friends by going to his Ron Fuller, the Tennessee Stud Facebook page. Like him, follow him there, automatically become friends with a legend. Look for his Studcast number 277 post. That's this one, and make your choice. On Twitter, find him on Twitter at Ron Fuller Welch. And if you have not already done so, follow him there too. That's another way to participate. Look for his Studcast number 277 post to make your choices. All right, the YouTube channel, it's Southeastern Rewind. It is famous on YouTube. It's filled with all kinds of information, videos, and Studcasts. It is also a great place to find out more about what's happening on the new streaming channel, ClassicContinentalWrestling.com. That's the big deal. ClassicContinentalWrestling.com is where you find everything that is the Tennessee Stud. His classic old school TV shows are absolutely great. There are 88 Southeastern, 23 Continental, and 12 Gulf Coast TV shows there right now, all in the order which they were recorded. Hundreds more are coming as well. 46 stud stories, 6 stars of the sport, 4 superstars of the past, and 12 chapters of his audiobook, Brutus, and hundreds of hours of fantastic old school wrestling is there already. All of this only $4.99 per month and $39.99 per year, plus the free 1-week trial is still available. It is the best deal in wrestling. And a quick mention for tnstud.com. tnstud.com. The stud store is set up and ready for Christmas. If you want some cool items, even autographed by the stud, check it out at tnstud.com. All right, Ron, so that's a bunch. I don't see how you keep up with it all. Where do we ride next week?
Well, we're going to be entering December, man, 1978. Knoxville has a great card on the first day of the month and all month long, for that matter. And it's going to be an all-tag team night, December the 1st, starts off the month. But there's one single match on that card, and that's going to be a special one. It's the end of the bounty matches, because Kevin Sullivan is finally going to get his shot at Ron Wright. Then down, we're going to be going south to the Gulf Coast, and they're not going to be outdone down there. The Stomper was going to get a return match for the Southeastern title with the new champion, Bob Armstrong. Southeastern Tag Champions, Carson and the Assassin, with their controversial manager, Billy Spears, was going to have to defend against another new team. Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden were going to wrestle them, and Rob and Jimmy are going to be one of the all-time best tag teams in the history of that part of the country. We're going to spend a lot of years there, man. Those guys are going to be some of the top. Also down there is going to be David Schultz against Tony Charles. It's a feud that kind of got rekindled in this show. And, man, it's going to turn into a wildfire before this one's over. And I hope we're going to be able to get to the learning tree question next week that we couldn't get to today. And I kind of heard this one, Dave, might have been something to do with holiday events. So really looking forward to answering that one. And I want to thank everybody for their support. And I hope you all enjoyed this one. And I hope you come back for more. And take care of yourselves and others. And may God bless us all.
For Ron Fuller in the Great Smoky Mountains, I'm David Summers saying thank you for listening. Find me at davidsummersproductions@gmail.com. This Studcast is a David Summers production for Tennessee Stud, LLC. Thanks for joining us today for this historic Studcast. The true story continues next week. So full Nelson your friends and point them in our direction for another ride with the Tennessee Stud.
1, 2, 3.
This is David Summers saying so long from the Great Smoky Mountains.